Diary of a Man in Despair. Friedrich Reck. November 9, 1940.
Dr. Strauss is an armed forces psychologist, and passes on the mental condition of prospective officer candidates. He told me that one young man, asked about his feelings and the impression made upon him by his reading of Faust, replied, "Well, that Faust was certainly quite a boy. But you know, doctor, that thing with Gretchen, he probably shouldn't have done that." So much for the legacy left to his people by great Goethe. The 22nd anniversary of the 1918 Munich revolt had just passed, and we talked about it. As a royalist, I had opposed it. All the old pictures rose up in my mind: the artillery unit from the Rhineland sent to put down the uprising, which camped the evening before the king's abdication almost in front of the windows of my place in Passaic, and which was immediately disarmed; the emaciated nags, torn horse collars, hungry cannoneers, and the rattle of the machine guns, and the dead lying on the much-trodden ground, so tiny and flat against it that they seemed already part of the earth. Then the triumphal parade of the newly born republic. Ingenuous, middle-class, as only that dear old Munich could be. Bearers of red flags who had obtained their banners only after hurrying about days earlier to get the required procurement orders. Behind them, veterans of many a socialist battle at the polls, little, bent gentlemen in spotted tailcoats. Oh, I remember that this parade of the protesting masses even included several frightful, camel's hair top hats waggling in the crowd, old-fashioned and thin as sawn-off stovepipes, towering over the revolution. Then, standing on buckboards, a couple of excited old fogies beating away with hammers at the brightly painted metal of the court purveyors' shields, and finally a completely unforgettable scene, on one of the strange stone animals in the Lenbach fountain, old Muzzum, looking not too unlike a winged Assyrian ox with his berry-brown beard, holding forth rapturously to an enraptured throng. That was the revolution in Munich. In Munich, just after the turn of the century, it was the custom for officials charged with the issuance of driving permits to appear for the tests wearing top hats. I can remember that on the second day of the revolution, in the midst of a mass uprising which proclaimed to the world its determination to topple all crowned heads into the dust, there suddenly came a vast and jubilant roar from the great crowd at the Karlsplatz. Somehow, the rumor had spread that King Ludwig was coming, King Ludwig, who had drowned 30 years before in Lake Starnberg, but who never died in the imagination of his subjects, King Ludwig, who built castles and ruined himself for Richard Wagner, who drove across the mountains in deep snow in an 8-horse sleigh seated behind powdered, periwigged lackeys. But this is Munich, infinitely unpolitical, possessed of a baroque little gambler's soul that the Prussians will never understand, Berlin's natural opposite. The Nazis, with their imbecile technocratic goals, will never remake Bavaria in their image, even if their occupation lasts another 10 years. And even if they were to win the war, they would still fail, for the following reasons: A. They lack souls, and B. They lack humor. As the enemies of the laughter of men, they are more afraid of humor than of a new declaration of war. To come back to Munich, I was there recently, and the hotel was unheated, the service poor, and the linen of doubtful cleanliness. The restaurants are open at certain hours only, and the moment the doors are opened a hungry, hysterical mob streams into the dining room. Elbows in the neighbor's ribs, this horde flies off to the nearest empty table, and crouches there, eyes bloodshot, teeth bared, until a bowl in which a paper-thin slice of some strange meat is swimming in an even stranger kind of gravy is brought to them. The whole thing has the look of the zoo when the keepers begin their regular feeding of the apes. But this is not the main thing that will remain in my mind from this latest visit to the once elegant city the Prussians have ruined. Near the main station, a long line of people wound down Sennefelderstrasse, that hideous and endlessly dismal thoroughfare. When I asked someone what the line was for, I was told that these people were waiting to get into a bordello, in broad daylight, in a queue that stretched to the station square and blocked traffic, soldiers on leave, war workers, and even a few women. The women were there certainly by error and out of a herd instinct, had no idea of the purpose of the line, and were the subject of the cynical, half-audible jokes and nasty laughter of the men. I learned that this day's business was about what it usually is: but that when there were trains crowded with soldiers on leave, the police had to be called. At such times, the line might be limited to 100 at a time, and maids employed by families in the area might be called in to help out. Really, this is the kind of thing that goes on in Munich today. This discreet establishment belongs to the same Christian Weber who was a busboy at the Blue Boar Café before he became Herr Hitler's pet, and able to criticize an artist like Clemens von Frankenstein, and live in the papal chambers of the old royal residence. Munich's sense of humor found expression recently when a whole flock of new field marshals and other new demigods were created by the regime. To satisfy Göring and his insatiable hunger for titles, the position of World Marshal was created. According to the joke, Goebbels, in view of his gay temperament, was named half-World Marshal, but Christian Weber received the title of Sennefeld Marshal. The title, of course, has reference to this discreetly flourishing establishment, which brings in handsome sums to the great man's dinner companion, and is, as I have said, on Sennefelderstrasse.